I'm H. James. I'm a security for Crypto & Co. I'm here to give you some insight into our newest adventure. I hope you enjoy it. Our newest adventure starts out with a tragedy. Gretchen is dead. Axel's in the hospital. And we're all just waiting around wondering what's going to happen next. Unfortunately, we didn't have to wait long. The dirty can't say that. The son of a, well, anyway, I'll tell you what, maybe I just better read straight from the book. Follow the Blood by Alexander Stone. Revenge. Linda was staring at the empty hospital bed. Terror filled her mind as she looked around the room and saw the blood-splattered wall. She stifled the scream in her throat, rounding the corner of the bed to see the body of the security guard with the newspaper still in his hand, lying on the floor next to the chair he must have been sitting in at the time. The blood was still trickling out of a small hole in the man's forehead, but the floor was covered in pooling blood. She could picture what the other side of the man's head must have looked like. Reinhardt was talking to her, but it was getting more and more distant. His pistol was pointing to the door, but the shock of seeing blood and not seeing Axel made the whole picture more and more unreal. Her vision was blurring and her mouth was moving, but no words were coming out, and the world began to go dark. Reinhardt caught her as she collapsed. The blood was fresh, so the killers were near. He was torn between going after them and protecting Linda. But Linda was here, and they were alone. The rest of the team was still at the gas house, so he didn't have a choice. He gently propped Linda up against the wall and ran to the door. Axel had been placed in a private room in one of the older buildings of the university hospital. Reinhardt scanned the hallways for cameras as he yelled, "Somebody call the police! There's been a murder!" At the sight of his pulled gun, one of the nurses screamed. Well, at least someone will call the Polizei. No cameras meant he had to get the information the hard way. He reached into his jacket, quickly pulled out his mobile phone, and called the gas house. At the gas house, Gretchen looked peaceful in death as she lay on her bed, surrounded by her favorite things. It had taken 2 days for them to get the body back from the authorities, even though they had performed all the necessary experiments to prove the cause of death. It was my turn to sit and wake with Broomhilder. The peaceful stillness of the moment was giving me time to cope with my new feelings and deal with the painful mental baggage I carry. It seemed the team was holding their collective breath, as if at any point in time a new deadly challenge would present itself. Each member of the team was doing something different to cope. Leon had taken a walk with Jessica through the surrounding forest of the gas house, hopefully planning their next move. James and Tammy were talking to the priest who had performed a wonderful ceremony for Princessin. Linda and Reinhardt had taken off to check on Axel. On the other hand, Yuri and Lenora seemed to have their hands glued together as he went everywhere she did, giving her as much support as he could during this terrible time. A truly scary change had happened to Wilco. To say he had changed would be like saying sugar was sweet. He dove into the internet and had not surfaced as far as I could tell. His not really listening air was gone, only to be replaced with a total concentration, which could only mean one thing: revenge. I looked over to Broomhilder, who was sitting staring at her mother's body. For now, a truce had been called in our bedroom war, but it had not stopped her from downloading her feelings to me. Broomhilder was a strong-souled, and she believed that her mother was in a better place. I fear that the calm was just the facade for the anger growing behind her eyes. One thing for certain, there was an organization here in Europe that had our number. It had gotten hurt twice, but they would be back. Plans for renovation were now on hold while Broomhilder decided what to do next. From the few thoughts she'd shared with me, it looked more like she wanted to turn the gas house into an armed castle. My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the phone in the hallway. Within moments, Lenore had answered it, and just as suddenly she burst through the door. "Father, Axel is missing and Reinhardt needs backup." I answered, "Tell him I'm on the way." I didn't need to look at Broomhilder to know how she felt. As I ran out the door, I could feel the heat of her anger boil to the top. For an instant, I almost felt sorry for the enemy, but it passed by the time I made it to the stairs. Wilco's domain. Wilco's domain no longer looked like a tussled-up teen's room. Clothes were neatly folded and put away or hanging in an open wardrobe. The bed was neatly made and pushed into the corner to provide more room for the 3 large tables set up in a U on the other side. Under the table were plastic green travel boxes of several of his newest acquisitions. On top of the 3 tables lined up were monitors, laptops, and a large basket of cream-filled oatmeal cookies, otherwise known as Wilco's brain food. Wilco was sitting at the table, staring at a monitor and working out the details of his newest plan. The first half of his plan was called the business. Part 1 was his list of tools he would need to keep the team going and making money. This included all the former toys he had collected earlier, such as the spectroscope and Sonic 5000, the energy delineator, or better known as Wilco's wand. Part 2 of his plan was time management. It took too much of his precious time to put together the episodes and deal with the websites, which made the money they needed to continue to operate. He was about to put the website management into the hands of some college friends he had who worked out of their mother's garage. He figured he'd have to put everything into the mini garage-run studios because of the lack of influence the outside world had with him. The most important things dealt with the last half of his plan. The basic destruction of the organization and all of its people who had been responsible for killing Cindy, his first and only real girlfriend. He would find them, hack their computers, and learn everything he could about them, then use any information he could find to destroy them. For the moment, all he really needed was just one lead to get started. Someone had tried to tap into their system just a few days earlier and met his Laughing Jack program. Unfortunately, the program was like an atomic bomb approach to anyone hacking into your computer. It left very little useful information in its wake. For the moment, he could not even tell how effective it had been and how many computers, other than the computer on the first IP address, had been formatted and rendered useless. Wilco was still in the process of building his contact list. Until then, he'd have to depend on the others to help him with his plan. He couldn't just break into every major law enforcement computer system in the world. Well, maybe he could, but it would just take too long. One thing for certain, he would not be on his feet had it not been for the bond he had with the baby dragon still in the egg. Like James, he decided to name his little friend. Because of the way data seemed to flow quicker and smoother in his brain with the help of the bond, he named the baby dragon Kilobyte. Since Cindy's murder, the bond had become so complete it seemed that he could even see the binary code when he programmed. However, computer code would never be the total arrangement of weapons he would need to fight this war. He needed some things that would do some physical damage. For now, every telephone call to or from the gas house was being monitored by one of his systems. This was his first warning as the telephone rang and the system began to record. He could see on the screen it was Reinhardt who was calling. It broke him free of his contemplations momentarily as suddenly Kilobyte sent an alarm through his mind. Spinning to face the proper computer, he spoke. "Play last telephone call." The file opened and played, and he realized the moment had arrived. The enemy had made their next move. Well, before we go too long, I decided this is about the place to stop on the reading of the book. Thank you for joining us, and stay tuned as Crypto & Co. Follow the Blood.